Was Mark Jefferson a psychopath, a sociopath? Did he kill to express his artistic freedom? Did he feel any remorse whatsoever? Did he regret his actions? Would it have been possible to resocialize him? Would potential imprisonment change him? If he wasn't an artist, would he still murder? Today we are discussing a mask that Mark Jefferson was wearing every single day, a mask of sanity. So what is psychopathy? Movies, books, and other pieces of pop culture tend to romanticize it, so it's quite important to focus on it metaphorically as possible, given the fact that I'm obviously not a doctor, so this video is just for the sake of it, for the sake of researching what's out there, researching some medical sources. When people think of psychopaths, they envision a serial killer, often presented in the movies, and while some psychopaths may murder, most of them actually don't. This doesn't mean they aren't dangerous, however. Psychopathy is a disorder characterized by atypical emotional responses and antisocial behaviors. Psychopathy is commonly associated with a reduced empathic response, and this deficit has been highlighted in a number of ways. For example, the willingness of psychopathic individuals to act in an antisocial manner with little evidence or concern for the impact that such behaviors may have on others suggests a diminished empathic response. Let's have a look at some of the most realistically presented psychopaths in movies, and some that missed the mark. According to Belgian psychiatry professor Samuel Leistadt, based on his 2014 study which has proven that realistic fictional psychopaths remain in the minority. Out of 400 movies that his team has watched, only 126 realistically portrayed psychopathic characters were found. Javier Bardem's character in No Country for Old Men is a classic psychopath. Tiger approaches murder with an uncanny sense of normalcy, perfectly happy to empty his trademarked bolt pistol without so much as wince. He seems to be effectively invulnerable and resistant to any form of emotion and humanity, the researchers wrote. Other realistically portrayed psychopaths were Hans Beckett in M and Henry Lee Lucas in Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. In the 1931 German film M, Peter Lorre plays a child killer who embodies many of the traits now thought of as belonging to a child predator, Leistadt and his colleagues observed. Lorre portrays Beckett as an outwardly unremarkable man tormented by a compulsion to murder children ritualistically. In 1986, John McNaughton film Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, the titular character's inability to plan ahead, coupled with his turbulent personal life and poor family relationships, make him a textbook idiopathic psychopath, Leistadt said. Some of the most famous movie psychopaths did not make the cut, however. Patrick Bateman in American Psycho, Gordon Gekko in Wall Street, Norman Bates in Psycho, and Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs are all entertaining and frightening, but Leistadt and his team said their characters' traits don't quite fit the psychopath mold. In our specific topic of interest, it appears that psychopathy in the cinema, despite a real clinical evolution, remains fictional, the artist wrote. Most of the psychopathic villains in popular fiction resemble international and universal boogeymen, almost as villain archetypes. What are the actual psychopath's traits? Could it be that a game actually got it right? Or did it present yet another psychopath villain archetype? According to Mental Health America of Eastern Missouri Institute, psychopaths in general have a hard time forming real emotional attachments with others. Instead, they form artificial, shallow relationships designed to be manipulated in a way that most benefits the psychopath. People are seen as pawns to be used to forward the psychopath's goals. Psychopaths rarely feel guilt regarding any of their behaviors, no matter how much they hurt others. But psychopaths can often be seen by others as being charming and trustworthy, holding steady normal jobs. Some even have families and seemingly loving relationships with a partner. While they tend to be well educated, they may also have learned a great deal on their own. When a psychopath engages in criminal behavior, they tend to do so in a way that minimizes risk to themselves. They will carefully plan criminal activity to ensure they don't get caught, having contingency plans in place for every possibility. Psychopaths can seem normal and often quite charming, a state of adaptation a psychiatrist Hervey Clerkley called mask of sanity. To compare, Sociopaths in general tend to be more impulsive and erratic in their behavior than their psychopath counterparts. While also having difficulties in forming attachments to others, some sociopaths may be able to form an attachment to a like-minded group of persons. Unlike psychopaths, most sociopaths don't hold down long-term jobs or present much of a normal family life to the outside world. When a sociopath engages in criminal behavior, they may do so in an impulsive and largely unplanned manner, with little regard for the risk or consequences of their actions. They may become agitated and angered easily, sometimes resulting in violent outbursts. These kinds of behaviors increase a sociopath's chances of being apprehended. Both psychopaths and sociopaths present risks to society because they will often try and lead a normal life while still remaining a danger to society. But psychopath is the more dangerous disorder because they experience much less guilt as a result of their actions. A psychopath also has a greater ability to dissociate from their actions. Without emotional involvement, any pain that others suffer is meaningless to a psychopath. And many famous serial killers have in fact been psychopaths. Let's go back to Mark Jefferson. Mark Jefferson is a photography teacher at Blackwell Academy and the main antagonist of Life is Strange. As a famous photographer and a widely recognized artist across America, he gained popularity during the 90s. Introduced as the cool and nice teacher who is greatly admired by his students, including Mark Schofield, he is later revealed to be the true main antagonist in Life is Strange. Throughout the game, Jefferson was either directly or indirectly responsible for the potential deaths of a total of 7 characters. Mark Jefferson seemed to be a charismatic and charming man, an active and passionate photographer and teacher on the outside. On the inside, he has been experienced and fallen into a routine of dragging, kidnapping, photographing and then disposing of victims. He believes that his subject has to be dominated and controlled to the point of total helplessness. While trying to show his perspective as a photographer, he criticized Diane Arbus's style. Diane Arbus was an American photographer best known for her intimate black and white portraits. Arbus often photographed people on the fringes of society, including the mentally ill, transgender people, circus performers, interested in probing questions of identity. Arbus's identical twins, Roselle, New Jersey, simultaneously captured the underlying differences and physical resemblance of twin sisters. A photograph is a secret about a secret. The more it tells you, the less you know, she once mused. She was fascinated by people who were visibly creating their own identities. Cross-dressers, nudists, slideshow performers, tattooed men, the nouveau riches, the movie star fans, and by those who were trapped in a uniform that no longer provided any security or comfort. When Victoria explains that Arbus captured the hopelessness of mothers and children in her photography, Jefferson was of the mind that Arbus's angle, seeing humanity as tortured, was bullshit. The act of photographing a person in an act of desperation or in a dark corner was too easy in his opinion, and that can only mean he was willing to take it one step further. Mark Jefferson was born and raised in Arcadia Bay, Oregon. He later moved away from Arcadia to pursue a professional photography career. He built himself a profitable career taking photographs of varying situations, typically for high-profile magazines during the 1990s. His status in the photography world was such that his works were collected in books, and some books that he published himself. We actually saw one of his books in the Awesome Adventures of Captain Spirit game. Now, later on he moved back to Arcadia Bay where he accepted a position of an art and photography teacher, which led to major increase of interest in the facility, bringing in students from all around the country to attend his lectures. Among these students were Max Schofield. He then used his position as an art teacher to find and seduce suitable models for his secret illegal photography he pursued in the dark room, a bunker in the possession of Prescott family. Now, there are various theories about Mark Jefferson and Sean Prescott's connection. Sean Prescott is the owner of the Prescott Foundation, which makes many donations to various funds around Arcadia Bay. He is also the co-owner of Blackwell Academy and donated money in order to own the Prescott dormitory on campus. We don't know much about him, we don't know where he was born, however we know that he's also in Arcadia Bay raised, same as Mark Jefferson. Since they grew up in the same small town and are about the same age, it is more than likely that they actually knew each other. It is more than likely that Mark Jefferson actually used that connection to gain access to a secluded barn, where he set up his dark room without any questions being asked, with a silent permission in fact. Which brings us back to that. When a psychopath engages in criminal behavior, they tend to do so in a way that minimizes risk to themselves. They will carefully plan criminal activity to ensure they don't get caught, having contingency plans in place for every possibility. Going back to a place he knows, he's familiar with, a city he grew up in, ensures that in case of a possibility of getting caught, he will know the area well enough to find a way out. Why else a well-known, world-class photographer would actually go back to a city that small, with not that many perspectives, when he could have landed anywhere? New York, Los Angeles, he could have gone to Europe. Everything was open to him. Everywhere was a possibility. But he picked Arcadia Bay because he knows Arcadia Bay. Because he could have been sure that if he had to run, if he had to hide, he would know where to go, he would know where to run, he would know how to outsmart the cops. He'd find a way out. And in Arcadia Bay, it was possible for him to easily gain models. According to Michael Newton, who compiled the stories of 544 serial killers, most modern-day serial killers tend to be territorial. They stalk a specific territory like neighborhood or a city. Files in the Darkroom has shown that it wasn't the first place he possibly haunted his victims. There could have been more, and perhaps his need to change environments was one chosen for the sake of safety. Psychiatrist Harvey Clickley also described psychopaths' behavior as predatory, claiming that traits common to some serial killers include sensation-seeking, a lack of remorse or guilt, impulsivity, need for control. Psychopaths can seem normal and often charming, but in reality they're manipulative. So we know that Sean Prescott at the very least enabled his behavior, possibly given a silent permission. In return, Jefferson would mentor Nathan and allow him to photograph his subjects in the darkroom, but in reality Jefferson was manipulating Nathan. Nathan is a very important figure in Jefferson's story. Jefferson was his mentor and a father figure. Nathan needed one because his father was very much distant, which Jefferson most probably knew, therefore he was more vulnerable to manipulation. Initially Jefferson was pleased with Nathan's involvement, but over time he became irritated and annoyed with him, especially after Nathan accidentally overdosed Rachel Amber and probably messed up the kidnapping of Kate Marsh. Nathan became not needed, a liability of a kind. This could also be an excuse to eliminate him because he knew the most about the dark room. That knowledge his safe was a death sentence. Mark Jefferson planned his eliminations carefully though. Process was thorough and strict. Pick them, kidnap them, drag them, take photos, dispose of. Some of his potential or actual victims included Kate Marsh, Rachel Amber, Victoria Chase, or our very own protagonist of the game, Max Caulfield. Kate Marsh was supposed to be his victim. Kate was dosed at a Vortex Club party by Nathan Prescott with the purpose of being taken to the dark room. Jefferson took photos of her while she was dragged, which, along with the party video of her kissing people while being dosed and the bullying, was part of the reason for Kate's suicide or her attempt of suicide unless you saved her. Rachel Amber was another person targeted by Mark Jefferson. We know she got involved with him. We know she was impressed by him and she believed she finally found a way out of Arcadia Bay. Developers went as far as revealing that Rachel Amber was in fact in love with him before her death. It is also rumored that they had slept together, which Stella pointed out. Both Rachel and Jefferson had their affections for photography and modeling, which could have led to Jefferson's easier way to manipulating her. Some claim it could have been a genuine affection, but I think we need to point this out again. Psychopaths don't have mutually dependent and respectful romantic relationships. They can't have a healthy sex life either. The psychopath is often a pro at seducing and getting someone into bed, but the process is more of a calculated game than an organic emotional and then sexual experience. Assuming he's a psychopath, why did he go as far as seducing Rachel Amber? Why did he go as far as actually sleeping with her? In my opinion, since we know that he actually wasn't her teacher, he needed to go one step further. It wasn't as easy for him because she wouldn't be just impressed with the fact that he's her teacher. He had to go one step further in order to gain her trust and have her join him with Nathan's help in what turned out to be her last final journey. Now, Victoria, on the other hand. Victoria very much had a crush on Jefferson, which he seemed to be aware of, but completely ignored her anytime she tried to make advances. He revealed to Max that he saw her as a spoiled brat. Jefferson had every opportunity to seduce her or sleep with her in order to gain her trust, just like he did with Rachel Amber. However, he simply did not have to do that. Again, the psychopath is sexually motivated by power. Everything is means to an end. If having a sexual relationship with a woman means that she will then trust him more, he will perform the sexual task. Romancing her served no purpose whatsoever. On top of everything, at this point, Rachel Amber was already missing. Jefferson needed to be more careful, I think, in order not to ruin his cover, and having an affair with his student would potentially bring a lot of attention to him, which would mean that he wouldn't be careful as a psychopath would be. Did Mark Jefferson kill before? He could have. There were several files uncovered in the darkroom which indicated he could have murdered before. It is quite possible his moving around the country to eventually go back to Arcadia Bay was calculated and planned ahead. He knew big cities with more organized police forces, more CCTVs around, and more potential witnesses brought major risks of getting caught, on contrary to smaller area he was very much familiar with that offered perfect conditions such as secluded barn with monitored hidden bunker. There's not much remorse, not much regret on Jefferson's side. It seems like he did exactly what he wanted in order to deepen his artistic ambitions, without considering the tragedy that he caused, the sadness he left behind. We do not know if potential imprisonment would have changed him, if he would have been resocialized. I feel like he belonged in a psychiatric ward. It is quite unknown what happens to Jefferson in the Sacrifice Arcadia Bay ending. It's presumed that he likely survived the storm, and if he did, then maybe he continued to actually kill. However, if the timeline is reversed and Chloe had been shot dead by Nathan back in Blackwell, Nathan is placed under arrest and is interrogated by the police. During this interrogation, Nathan reveals Jefferson's crimes and he is too arrested. His crimes were actually mentioned in the True Colors game. 5 years later, photographers reflect on the shocking events of Arcadia Bay. Everyone in the world of photography knew Mark Jefferson by August of 1996. Following his landmark, showing at the Radio Nova exhibit in New York, Jefferson's stark sexual style was both critically and commercially unparalleled. But the future of this Oregon native was not bright, in fact. In fact, it would darken the history of the seaside Arcadia Bay forever. As far as we know, Mark Jefferson had no actual remorse and no real emotions following his deeds. He does not seem to be convinced what he's doing is even inherently wrong. He is a valued artist, and he is justifying everything he does as necessary for showing the world the true beauty of his art, real beauty of moments of desperation. We know that he was an excellent manipulator. He was well behaved, well educated. He was able to control himself even when Max accused him in Principal Wells's office. He was smart and he was planning ahead. So let's ask again, does this make him a psychopath, a sociopath, or an archetype villain? Sociopaths make it clear they do not care how others feel, behave in hot-headed and impulsive ways, prone to fits of anger and rage, recognize what they are doing but rationalize their behavior, cannot maintain a regular work or family and life, can form emotional attachments but it is difficult. Does Mark Jefferson meet some of these criteria? Yeah, sure he does. But let's have a look at psychopath. Psychopaths pretend to care, display cold-hearted behavior, fail to recognize other people's distress, have relationships that are shallow and fake, maintain a normal life as a cover for criminal activity. They fail to form genuine emotional attachments, then may love people in their own way. Perhaps he did love Rachel in his own way? I guess we'll never know, because they refused to make the bloody game in between Before the Storm and Life is Strange. Mark Jefferson's pursuit of capturing the pure essence of human fragility and showing its beauty in his mind is a valid reason to do whatever he's doing. Or, a textbook psychopath logic. Having encountered everything that has been said, you decide. Thank you so much for watching.